So I wanted to give you a Thailand travel update. Some news came out today on the news in Thailand from Thailand News and a number of other news stations, and I went ahead and contacted some of my contacts back in Bangkok and in Thailand in general, and had a couple conversations with some individuals. So um, I know it's been reported in the news. It was broadcasted on the news that. Let me read what exactly it says directly. It says Thailand plans to waive its mandatory quarantine for vaccinated visitors to its capital Bangkok and top tourist destinations from October on. Well, the problem with that comment though is the person who said it. It was just a general government official. And for those of us who've been in Thailand long enough, we know that there's so many different provinces, so many different cabinets, so many different officials. And really, the only official news that really holds any weight is Prayut, the prime minister. So if Prayut and his cabinet has come out and said, okay, the goal is to gear up and put systems in place to open by October, then that would be some good news. Although a lot of times when they promote what they're going to do, there's either number one, there's delays, or number two, it's just a proposal and it's not definitive. Um, there's a lot of steps involved before something becomes official. And the problem with a regular official stating that the plan is to waive the mandatory quarantine by October is it's just one of the officials. If the prime minister and his cabinet comes out and says, "Hey, we are definitely going to go ahead and gear toward opening October 1st," then I would be 50% good with that comment in terms of believing it would happen. Unfortunately, with the system in place, there's always delays. And so, mentally, in my mind, I would think, okay, they're shooting for October. If it happens November 1st or December 1st, I'll be really happy. So, until Prayut, the prime minister, and his cabinet says something definitive, and it's not just coming from a regular official, then I'm not going to get too excited. Some of the areas that are being discussed, though, are going to be Chonburi area, Koh Phangan, Koh Samui, Krabi, Bangkok. Phuket's not on the list because Phuket so far still is on this guesstimate estimate of trying to open by July 1st by making sure that everybody on the island is vaccinated, or at least they have 70% or more, so that way it's kind of set up on a herd immunity. Currently, right now, we're back on to the 14-day quarantine in a government approved quarantine hotel. Um, right now, there's a major lockdown in pretty much all of Thailand. Everybody's either in the red, deep red, or dark red. Restaurants only have takeaway food. Everything else is closed back down again. Things are actually, yeah, things are back to like what they were at the beginning of the COVID situation, if we can remember that back in February and March of last year. We're back to kind of square one. Now, it says here in 2019 they welcomed a record 40 million visitors. And so far, based on the numbers, I believe they had about 6.5 to 6.7 million visitors this year. So, in order to get it back up to the numbers, it decreased by sevenfold. They're going to have to open up the borders at some point. The new plan is to try to get people coming in, basically the winter birds and all the people who travel in the fall and the winter time. There's so many Northern Europeans and Europeans that come over there, and as the weather gets bad here in the States, in the UK, and Europe, people like to flock over to Thailand. Now, the health minister Anutin said that he expects to get about 10 to 20 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And they've been working pretty hard to get the different types of vaccines into the country. right now there's very few people vaccinated in relation to the overall population. To tell you the truth, the Philippines and Cambodia have done a better job of vaccinating their people than Thailand has. Thailand has far more people. They rely more on tourism than the other two countries, but they just haven't been able to get anything together. And so, as I report this, and after I spent the last 4 hours talking to my contacts and talking to friends out there, watching the news, the Thai local news, um, it's nice that people are starting the conversation and saying, "Hey, let's go ahead and have a target date of October, and let's do away with the whole quarantine situation." Initially, Thailand went through over a dozen different proposals to get tourism off the ground, and almost all of them involved making people spend time in quarantine hotel. And they kind of basically decide on their own. They Thai people and the Thai government, they have this illusion that people are going to flock and come regardless of how much you charge them to stay in a quarantine hotel, and no matter how many hoops you make them go through. Thailand is the number one tourist destination country, so people will come regardless. Well, based on these quarantine hotels and the packages that they set up, all the hoops that you had to go through, and anybody who's looked at the list is a mile long of things you have to get done in order to get here. And with majority of the visitors having 2 or 3 weeks at a maximum, they don't want to spend 10, 14 days in a quarantine hotel. They either don't have the funds to be able to spend it on the quarantine hotel, or they just don't want to spend majority of their vacation in the quarantine hotel. And so the plans to get tourism up and running and off the ground, although they put the quarantine hotel and the quarantine number of days in place, is kind of basically a major flop. Tourism did not pick up that dramatically. The whole quarantine situation and the program they set up was pretty much a flop. And I think it's finally registering, hitting home that that everybody outside of Thailand, most of the individuals from the Scandinavian countries that are winter birds and they come to Thailand, a lot of the visitors from the UK and other surrounding European countries, they've been saying all along they're not traveling to Thailand until the quarantine is over, until the quarantine is eliminated. I would say from all the foreigners that I've talked to, probably like 8 out of 10 individuals have said the quarantine has to be zero in order for them to come back to Thailand. And 2 out of the 10 said they would be okay with quarantine. They don't like the 14-day quarantine, but if it was 10 days or 7 days, they probably can live with that. So 2 out of the 10 said that they're willing to do some sort of quarantine as long as it isn't 14 days. And so when you have that amount of people who've already voiced their concerns, they've been already stating a lot of things on the forums, a lot of things publicly. And I think it's finally registering and hitting the Thai officials and the government that, hey, we just assumed everybody was going to go ahead and flock into Thailand regardless of the cost that we were going to institute and regardless of all the hoops and the paperwork we're going to make people do. And then the fact that we were still going to make people quarantine, the full amount or almost the full amount, even if they were vaccinated. I think they've realized, okay, this is not going to go over very well. So if we want to revive tourism, and it's been longer than a year since the lockdowns have occurred, if we want to get the economy up and running and help our Thai businesses, the individual mom and pop shop owner and the Thai individuals who really rely on tourism, we're just going to have to go ahead and realize, hey, we got to loosen some things. We got to get the country vaccinated a little bit quicker. And then on top of that, there's no point in making people who have been vaccinated and then they have the certificate showing that they don't have COVID before they fly out to Thailand. That we can't really force them to quarantine additional if they show that they've been vaccinated and they don't have COVID when they get on the plane. And so I think that's kind of hitting home now. And so at least the dialogue has started. but I don't want to really jump up and down, and I don't want to pass great information on. It's always good to have information out there, but who the information is from is very important. And so right now, I'm glad the information has changed, but Thailand's still in early stages of their third wave of lockdowns, and so we're a bit away. I think we need to get this current pandemic situation controlled first. Then we can evaluate how true this comment is, and then from there, take the steps necessary to move in the right direction. But that's a little bit of an update right now, and I'll be in touch as soon as I get further information. So take care.